Hi, everybody. So I am Emily Johnson. I am the president of Thomas Starr King's parent teacher organization, Friends of King. And I was asked to kind of join and help out tonight. We're a part of a new district. And so we're here today. We're going to talk to some of the candidates. And I see David is on, and we're going to talk to some of the candidates about what the redistricting means, what school board means, what voting means, all of it. Just really quickly, I want to say thank you to the Los Feliz Improvement Association for hosting this evening. The LFIA is at, I'm going to read this actually, because it's so beautifully written. The Los Feliz Improvement Association is an all-volunteer organization that advocates for and takes action to improve the quality of life for all the residents of Los Feliz. LFIA has been working for Los Feliz for over 100 years to foster community, celebrate and protect our natural environment, and preserve our shared history. LFIA is happy to be able to sponsor tonight's important discussion, and we are so happy that this is happening. I think we should get right into it. David, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. Everybody, this is David. I'm just going to say you're wrong. Tokofsky?
Yeah, you said it right, but you spelled it wrong.
Oh yeah, it's a T. Tokofsky.
Yes, it's.
So
tea,
you.
But I prefer coffee if you have coffee instead of tea.
David Kofifi.
There you go.
David is a 12-year school board veteran, former, and I'm going to ask you to just kind of explain why and how Los Feliz is now in a new district and kind of the current state of affairs. I do want to say to people who are listening, you can ask questions in the chat. So Dan and I will be monitoring that questions, and we can help throw them in if possible. Thank you, David. Hi.
Sure. I'm David Tokofsky, and I'm a former Marshall High School teacher. And I also taught there for 12 years, and I was on the school board for 12 years or 144 months. So let me just start out by saying that nowhere in the United States Constitution is education mentioned explicitly. And therefore, in the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution, it says that powers not mentioned in the Constitution belong to the state or to the people. And so that's why, for example, homeschooling is constitutional, because the 10th Amendment leaves it to the people. But most people in most states live under their state legislature, and the state legislature provides most of the monies and creates the authority as the state and the state constitution to create local school boards. And so here in LA, we are part of the state of California. 90% of the money comes from the state, 10% comes from, or 9% from the federal government, and a little bit from engaged communities like Los Feliz and other neighborhoods that raise additional money by festivals and sales and so on. So a board member's job and the locally elected school board is to essentially twofold. One, to hire a superintendent and set the goals for that superintendent and hold that person accountable. And two, be fiscally responsible for the budgets that come from the state and the federal government, as well as any other monies that come to a school. So those are the two responsibilities: hiring the superintendent, holding that person accountable to the goals, and to be fiscally responsible. But above all, we know that a school board member is a representative. And so that person has to be the, as we say in Spanish, portavoz, has to carry the voice of the constituents to the institution and make sure that the institution is understood by the constituents. So also explicitly in the US Constitution, which schools are not, is a requirement to conduct a census both for representation and for taxation every 10 years. And so every 10 years, the federal government does its best with help from locals to count up the number of people. And as we know in California, people are moving to New Mexico and Oregon, Florida and Texas, and Colorado. And so we've been losing folks. And when you lose folks, you have to maintain the equality of the districts, congressional districts, Senate districts, assembly districts, county supervisors, city councils, and the over 1,000 school boards in the state of California. And so while I was on the board, I fought really hard in the redistricting to make sure all of John Marshall's constituent parts, Echo Park, Silver Lake, Elysian Valley, Los Feliz, Atwater, were all in the same district. This time, the redistricting commission and then the city council itself chose, because of the demographics and the most political event in American government called redistricting, or gerrymandering, named after one of the founding fathers, Eldridge Geary, made it so that Los Feliz stayed together, but in fact, Silver Lake is split in half, Echo Park is split in half, and all sorts of things happened that people weren't necessarily thinking of. And so I'm very glad you, as an association, I remember you of providing scholarships to students at Marshall, supporting the schools of the area, as well as being engaged parents and business folks, have put this together. And I have, in those 4 minutes, I would like to have said, one, the power of education belongs to the people or the states. States have given it to the local jurisdictions, and that the Constitution requires that every 10 years, the school boards, some school boards like the LA Community College District, are elected at large. And so there are no districts per se. They represent the entire institution. In 1975, the voters of LA changed LA Unified in order to enhance representation of different communities, but probably more related to one of the recalls at the time, split LA Unified into 7 separate districts that have to be roughly with under 2% difference in population, adjusted every 10 years. And that is all of you want on the history of school systems, as well as redistricting.
I'm learning so much.
That's all right. I think if the seniority of schools, I would have been a history teacher at Marshall, but I ended up being a government teacher.
So let me ask you, because this is actually specific to me, but both of my children, I have a 15-year-old, a 10th grader, and a 6th grader. One is at in North Hollywood, and one is at King. And I live in a completely different district. And so when you say something like this, and this is for the history of it, of there's 7 districts, I'm voting for somebody who's not actually going to affect either of my children's education, or does the whole school board work together?
That's a very good question. Ideally, the 7 trustees, which I think is a wonderful name, rather than school board member, the trustees of the public trust, are supposed to work for the betterment of the institution being public education, the laboratories of American democracy. So that when issues come up, they're thinking of the whole. But I think you're absolutely right. What has happened since 1975, one, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Representation was enhanced initially, but in some ways, the LA Community College District has more diversity on the elected officials than the school district. And so people get balkanized and they say, oh, that's my school and my district. Right. When in fact, it's all connected. And the fact is that LA Unified, by being a large district, has the opportunity in Sacramento to be a very significant political player. We have a large number of senators and assembly people and Congress people. And if we all sort of work together, row together, we can grow the pie, as I say fiscally, for the betterment of all students and not pit one student against the other. So yes, your kids fall in different school trustee areas, but you're voting as a resident of where you live for one particular trustee, and hopefully all of these trustees don't pit one neighborhood against another, but do their best to rise the tide for all boats, as President Kennedy used to say.
Wouldn't that be nice? There is a question in the chat. That says, so Los Feliz is the only part of the neighborhood that has a school board rep that represents King and Marshall. I think is the question, King and Marshall are in the same district? Because the answer is to that is yes.
I think what happened, I don't know what the motivation, but let me just say there were 15 members elected to a commission, one per each school board member. The mayor got 4 appointees, and the president of the city council, Nuri Martinez, a former school board member, got 4. That made 15 people, and those 15 people looked at the demographic data, had map makers, and then politically began to draw things. And so it turned out that they chose to split up what was unified for the Marshall High community, which was supposed to be one of the goals, is to keep communities together. Los Feliz was kept together, but Silver Lake, above Sunset, north of Sunset, is in one school board district 5, Jackie Goldberg, and south of Sunset is in board seat 2. The chair of the commission of 15 was the spouse of Maria Brenes, one of the candidates, and there were other former candidates for school board on that commission. They drew up a map and sent it to the city council. The city council got to make any alterations it needed to do and voted on the districts that we will now have for 10 years, barring any legal consequences. So yes, the Marshall High feeder elementary schools like Ivanhoe is in a different elected area. And sometimes having two school board trustees can be more powerful for a community than having one, but oftentimes the entirety of the massive district, remember this is 26 cities inside LA Unified, including the city of LA and the county of LA pieces. So again, if everybody rose together, the system can be better, but very often people fight over resources.
Right. And so she followed up saying, like, so sort of like me, but you can live in Ivanhoe and vote for Jackie Goldberg, but Marshall is in District 2 now.
That's right.
You can live in Echo Park and be zoned to go to, like, as your local school, and that person is not your representative.
Right. And not too many of us pay attention to the intricacies of the redistricting.
Yeah.
And larger larger interest groups like the teachers union, the service employees union are very thoughtful and engaged with it, and they're looking to make sure that the ends justify the means, and make sure that they get candidates that fulfill their aspirations. But again, every one of the 7 has roughly the same number of constituents and voters, and they vary in race and age, but there was Ms. Goldberg was very active. Some of you in the Los Feliz area know in the redistricting of the city council, and concerns about the city council, but there was less focus on what was happening to the board seat 5 as a whole. And I think some of the candidates were involved either directly or indirectly in that redistricting, and they could possibly speak to their own aspirations as well as the realpolitik. The Supreme Court has referred to redistricting or gerrymandering as the most political moment in American government. And this happens every 10 years based upon the demographics. We change the number of electoral votes. We've lost over 1 million people in the last 10 years in California. We lost a congressional seat. And if we follow the pattern of our other big state, New York. Over the next 20 years, we will continue to be losing, but we still have the significant #1 state in the country. LA Unified, while it has lost a number of tens and scores of thousands of kids, is still the second largest district in the country, the first in the state, and we have $58 million of surplus this year. If we're all working together, LA Unified and public education should be getting a large chunk of that from our state legislature and governor.
Can we spend some of it on art classes? Because I have to raise $100,000 every year to.
Well, there is a measure that former Superintendent Austin Buettner has on the ballot that will raise roughly $100 million a year if the voters approve it, and the initiative gets certified by the Secretary of State and the various counties registrars of voter, and that will bring in a significant amount of money earmarked for the arts.
It better be, because I'm mad.
Well, don't paint while you're mad.
No, it's art therapy.
Okay.
Art therapy is good for getting it all out.
There you go. I'll vote for him. His name is Art Therapy?
Art therapy, vote for him.
Okay.
Dr. Garcia.
Enough from me. I've spoken over 14 minutes, so.
You've been perfect. You've fallen into my giant master plan and like delivering it. Thank you for your help and your information. That's like, I don't understand how any of this works because it's so convoluted. It was enough I could do to figure out how to bank points for 4 years to make sure my kids got into the magnet that was also their local school at the time. Like, yeah. But thank you. And if people have questions for David, you can obviously leave them in the chat, and we might be able to get back to them as time goes on. Dr. Garcia is here, the principal for John Marshall High School. Thank you for joining us. I remember you from one of the LFIA education meetings. I was there looking for a text alert. And Dr. Garcia, what we would love to hear is just sort of what principal and staff, like, I would always spend so much time being mad at the principals of our schools for not doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh, the principal did this, and oh, the principal. And then I find out that I really should just be mad at the school board because the principal's hands are tied. Can you share a little bit about what you do, like what your delineations are, and what your relationship with school board is, how much control you have, you know, in like 5 minutes? Oh, you're still muted.
Yeah, thank you. That I unmuted myself. I get mad at the Marshall principal all the time, so that's okay. You could do that too. You know, it's one of the big major misconceptions about education in California that the school district and the school board is standing in the way of reform. I mean, that's really what motivated many people with good intentions to support the charter movement. It's, you know, principals are held back. They can't do what they want to do. So let's support independent schools. Excuse me. The reality is that strong principals do push back on the district often and ask for allowances, ask for waivers, ask for things that we want to do that maybe other schools are not doing. And most of the time, school districts, you know, meaning administrators, district level administrators, they'll allow that. If you have a good idea you want to implement, if it's maybe out of the norm. My experience, this is my 36th year in education. I've been a high school principal for 15 and worked in district offices for a year and a half, was assistant principal for 6, the whole bit. So I have not encountered that narrative that the school board or the district holds us back. We at school sites often complain that we want additional support, but it's not like we're being held back. There's plenty for us to do within the parameters of what the district expects. So our school site administrators' relationships with the school site administrators relate, to answer your question, relationships with school board members is almost non-existent in LA Unified. The school board seats are very large and there are a lot of schools. It is a very different thing in small school districts. It's a whole different atmosphere. So if you're thinking about majority of school districts in California have 1 or 2 high schools. So say the average is 2 high schools. The superintendent of the district is talking to the principal 2 or 3 times a week. The school board members are visiting. They know almost all the administration, and that's just not the case in LA. I don't talk to the superintendent of schools frequently. And if I do, that means I'm in trouble. So that's not really a cool thing I want to be doing. So you may have heard, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second. The superintendent, you may or may not know that I'll say that he's looking carefully at how the district is broken up by local districts. He sees that there's a lot of autonomy. Each district does its own thing. And he's expressed that he wants to rein that in a little bit. He wants to do a little bit more of what he experienced in Miami-Dade, where it was more top down and controlled. You know, it's significantly smaller than LA. So therefore, I'm mostly in contact with my, these days, the directors are called Community of Schools Administrators. And some of you have met the one for us. The name is Dr. Rodriguez. And I go through him. I prefer our current system. I don't want to have to call downtown to Beaudry. I don't want to call the board office. I call my immediate supervisor and have him make those calls. So I think our current system is pretty good. And now, you know, Jackie Goldberg, who had been our board member, she is a kind of a different type of board member. She's super experienced as a politician. At this point in her career, she's not looking to be a, you know, higher office, because she's already held all the higher offices except for governor pretty much. So, and she's really down to earth. So she would visit, you know, we do invite her from time to time, and she would come and talk to us, but it was just more of a friendly conversations. It's not really, she doesn't really come in and grill us. Now, I was principal at another school in another school board district, and the school board members out there, really the same thing, did not come to school very often. So that's the short version to answer your question.
Can I ask what you think of the new superintendent?
Sure, you can ask. Well, you know, the truthful answer is that the jury's out. I've kind of alluded to the fact right now that he hasn't made any type of announcement that he's going to restructure the district. What I am saying is that the current structure, from somebody with my experience, works well. And I don't know, I mean, maybe he has some other brilliant idea. It'll work better than the one we have now. It's too early to tell. I can say that the one thing I can say that's true is that he is 100% engaged. I think I would say that for most superintendents, but with him, it's really obvious. He is trying to learn as much as possible. He has a more traditional, outgoing MO than the previous superintendent. Our current superintendent is like most big city superintendents across the United States, where he carries himself as a politician. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. So he's giving 100, he's bringing 100% to the game. That's what I could say there. I can continue to answer questions. I invited one of my colleagues. We just call him Finn. If you called him Mr. Finn, he might look around for his dad. There you go.
I say there's two Gary Garcias here and they look nothing alike. Well, because we do have like a couple minutes until we
Sure.
bring the candidates in. I would like, and Finn, what's your role in all of this?
So I'm a school teacher at Marshall High. I've been there for 140 years, and I've enjoyed every one of them. I'm also, I'm an LAUSD parent, and I live about half a mile from Marshall High. So I'm a community member. I'm all in.
Right on. Samesies.
And he has two N's in his last name.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Dave, how did you manage to avoid being another Gary Garcia?
Well, his name was spelled wrong, so I had nothing to do with that. Can I ask you both as admin, what would you like to see? Like, what would be your top thing of like, oh, if they could just change blah, please focus on this.
My dream has nothing to do with LA Unified. It has to do with the people of the state of California. I don't understand for the life of me how California, well, actually I do understand, and it's not good, but I'll just say it this way. It's so very frustrating that the people of California, so proud of our state, can allow for now 3 decades of having the per pupil funding be in the lower half of the states. If we were in the American Northeast, we would literally have twice as much, in some cases, 3 times as much dollars per person. Now, I know a lot of cynical people don't think that we would spend the money wisely, or why does it cost so much to run a school? Well, the simple answer is that a school is taught by people like Mr. Finn, and people cost money. And so, for example, I am using current and temporary, I want to emphasize temporary, state and federal COVID relief related dollars. We are going to be one of the only schools that will have 3 psychiatric social workers on our campus, and it's barely scratching the surface. But when that money runs out, I'd have to go back to 2. I was principal at Hamilton High School for 10 years. I didn't have the funding that I do at Marshall because we have more Title I students, more kids on free and reduced lunch. I could not afford to have a psychiatric social worker at my previous school, and I had 3,000 kids. So if I had a wish, it would be to adequately fund us. And I have no problems with accountability. I have no problems with showing the public how I spend my money currently, and to have to be able to answer to how we as a school district, or how I or people at Marshall spend their money. So that's, again, going back to my opening statement, LA Unified is not holding us back. It's people of the state of California, to be that blunt and harsh. And I know that people in the audience here are not opposed to more funding. I understand that, but the people in the state seem to be okay with this. And the ugly answer to my question about why this is, simply look at the demographics of the students in our state. It's very different than when I was in high school. I was in high school in the 1970s. We were the top funded state in the country, and it was great, but the schools don't look like they do today.
Right. Mr. Finn, what about you? And thank you, Dr. Garcia. Is it all about funding? Or?
Certainly funding is a huge issue, and I'll agree with everything Dr. Garcia just said. I'm used to saying that sentence, by the way.
Yeah.
But
We know that already.
When he mentions that our budget is transparent and anybody could look at how we spend every dime, and how I sit on a couple of school governance boards at Marshall that oversee, the Title I money that we get from the federal government, or the IMA that we get, that we oversee through the Shared Decision-Making Committee. I will just throw out there, I wonder if the charter schools that share the Los Angeles Unified School District facilities have as transparent a budget I'm not an expert on this, but I have my suspicions. So I have some questions about the accountability of the taxpayer dollars that go into charter schools. But overall, I'd say if you look at LA Unified, you know, we have something almost a $14 billion budget. It's $2 billion more than in the city of Los Angeles as a whole. I think we do a pretty good job managing what we've got and how much work we have to do for so many students.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. As someone who went to high school in Connecticut, I can speak to the Northeast education system. I traveled Europe with my jazz band, for God's sake. We can't even get one here.
Yes, one quick point for
final remarks, because we have the candidates queued up.
like Mr. Garcia is making us think globally, but I always believe in acting locally. And Los Feliz Improvement Association and businesses of 90027, for example, can put a measure on the ballot that only the people of 90027, or you could add another zip code if you wanted to, vote on. And that measure would be equivalent to what is called a parcel tax. And that tax, either by square footage or by parcel, could bring revenue strictly and accountable to 90027. It has not been done very often, but after being a classroom teacher like Mr. Finn for a decade and being on the board and thinking about these things, this is an idea. And I thank Los Feliz Improvement Association for putting this together. It could help take the lead and put a measure on the ballot, because we tried to do the entire district on a measure called EE, which had some difficult times and didn't make it. But it can be done smaller in chunks and maybe grow so that we can think globally by acting locally.
Thank you. That is a good idea. I would like the candidates, if you guys are here, I think you're all in attendance. Are they allowed to turn on their cameras? Are we all popping them in? There they are. Hello. Mr. Segura. Okay, we got everybody coming. Come on, everyone. As they get added on. Dr. Garcia is like, we have a great jazz band. I'm sure you do, but do you travel Europe?
Not yet.
No, but Emily, did you ever get to play the Greek Theater? Because our jazz band will be playing there on Friday, May 27th. So we know there are some perks to being a Marshall I musician.
That's amazing. Okay, good. See, I learned something new. That's why we're here. That's wonderful. Tickets are on sale. Can you put the link in the chat for everyone?
Yeah, they're going to be on sale at the door, and we have special seats. We have box seats. We have seats up front, and it's not really a fundraiser. Most of the money goes to the Greek so we can do this. We're going to have kids with special needs on the stage. We're going to have elementary kids playing with the high schoolers. We're going to have dancers. We're going to have Shakespeare. Oh my God. Finn and I could talk about it for an hour.
That's wonderful. Well, I do hope actually you will put the information in the chat so people can copy it and at least get the dates.
I'm on it, Dr. Garcia.
Okay. I'm going to ask you.
Thank you for inviting us, and to the candidates, good luck with you. I do have a concurrent meeting with parents on Zoom, and I got to go back to that meeting. Hi, Erica. All right, bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We're now moving to the candidates who have joining us this evening. I am going to, thank you, Finn. It's in the chat. I am going to let each of you in true school form, each of you introduce yourselves, and then popcorn to the next person to introduce themselves. We'd like to have just like a few minutes to start off, just to introduce yourselves. And then we are going to go into a few questions that people have sent in. I will say I'm going to popcorn first to Erica Velarde Espinoza. because our children have gone to school together since kindergarten. And I've always known you to be a very passionate and well-spoken and courageous woman. So popcorn down there to Erica.
Okay, so I'm just doing the intro, right? Okay. Well, my name is Erica Velarde Espinosa. And as Emily just mentioned, I am a mom. And if you know how moms are, when it comes to our kids, we fight. We want to give our kids the best that we can. And now I want to fight to be on LAUSD to give all of the kids the best education with no excuses. My two kids go to school here in Los Feliz at our public schools. And in the past 10 years, I've been on the ground with students, parents, teachers, and administrators, going through the struggles and challenges that they face and helping to find solutions to make our schools great. I've volunteered in the classroom with teachers on PTO boards, school site council, and even worked with my Girl Scout troop to fill school needs and improvements. 4 years ago, I was elected to the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council as education chair. And since then, I've worked with the LAUSD facilities, the city, and the school board to help the neighborhood schools address site issues and needs that they have. As a school board member, I would be your voice and bring your needs to the concerns to the superintendent. I would fight for the students to give them the best education with no excuses, because today education is the most important and vital thing that we need to have to save our kids' future.
Who would like to go next? Miho?
Good evening.
Oh,
Thank
and I should say everybody has one. I'm sorry. I should say we have all this timed. Everyone has 1 minute.
you. Okay. So thank you. My name is Miho Marai, and I would be honored to serve as your very first Asian Pacific American woman school board member for the Los Angeles Unified School District, Local District 2. I am currently an education rights immigration attorney who has been advocating on behalf of students with disabilities through my pro bono, low bono law firm since 2009. I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit, Community Lawyers Inc. in Compton. I am an immigrant from Japan who decided to become a US citizen to run for school board. I believe that I am the strongest candidate. I have 4 years of classroom experience as a former LAUSD bilingual Inglés Español elementary school teacher in South LA. I earned my teaching credential through LAUSD's district intern program in 2000. I'm currently earning a graduate certificate as an educational therapist in order to serve low-income English language learners with dyslexia and ADHD. Finally, I've been an activist since the 1990s on immigration and education issues. I will be a strong voice for all communities that have not been adequately represented by our current board members, including the Asian Pacific American community and our most vulnerable children, students with disabilities, and students who are in the foster care and juvenile justice system. I am a write-in candidate, but I am still in this run, so please support me if you can. And thank you, Erica, for letting me know about this. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. Miguel, Maria? Who's next?
Sure, I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Angel Segura. I was born and raised in Board District 2, before Board District 2 and now redistricting Board District 2. I attended Union Avenue, Virgil Middle School, and Belmont High School. From the community. After that, I started advocating right away in education. I understood that education was different. I had a different education system compared to other folks from other areas. I've advocated for education at the national level. I've also worked at the national level. I've advocated for education at the state level, and I've worked at the state level as well. And I've also continued to advocate and train parents at the local level. And I've also worked at the local level. I love education. For me, education is a way out of poverty. It gave me a lot of opportunities that other folks wouldn't have. I graduated with a class of 900 from Belmont in 2004. At that time, we had a track system, and I saw the inequity that was happening and injustices that were happening in our schools. And I always said that I would continue to advocate towards education. I'm running for this seat because this is my community. I was born and raised here, and I'm a very passionate person. I believe that there's so much you can do, and I've worked at every angle within LAUSD. I've been a full-time teacher. I have my master's in education, and I continue to be in the classroom. I returned to the classroom a year ago when I lost my job, training parents at a nonprofit. I didn't expect to run. I never expected to run. I didn't even think about running, but I saw the opportunity after coming back from the office of Secretary Cardona, working at the national level, and I didn't see anybody running at the time. I did it and I stayed in the race and I continued to advocate. Regardless of wherever this goes, I believe I'm a very strong candidate because I'm passionate. And that's a little bit about me right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Maria Brenes, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, ella. And I am a longtime education and children's advocate in the east side of Los Angeles, which is in Board District 2. I'm also a very proud LAUSD parent with 2 children that attend an elementary school in Board District 2. And a very, very proud mom of a child with an IEP in LAUSD. One of the main roles I have had in this community the last 20 years is as the leader of the nonprofit movement building organization Inner City Struggle that is based in Boyle Heights. And the core purpose of our organization has been to bring together everyday residents of the east side of LA, intergenerationally, young people, families, voters, to identify and discuss problems, issues, concerns in their schools, in their communities, help them articulate what's at stake, and develop solutions and work together to advance and bring attention to those solutions. And one of our core issues has been educational equity, access, opportunity, and educational justice. Because on the east side of LA, we've had to challenge and disrupt the school to jail pipeline that has persisted for decades. And the way that we have gone about that is believing and uplifting the promise of LAUSD to being a system that serves all equitably and invest in them fully. And so from advocating for new LAUSD schools to wellness centers, to access to the A to G courses, to dismantling punitive discipline policies and increasing equitable school funding, in collaboration with our schools, we've made a great difference. When I started this work as a young organizer, the graduation rate was only 40% in our community, and today it is way over 80%. So I'm running because I understand and have the experience in what it takes to build coalition, build movement, to uplift our public schools and achieve wins and policy change and public investment. And I'm excited to answer more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to, we're going to ask a couple questions, and Dan, if you can, because I get caught up listening and I don't look at my clock. Can you start a clock? We're going to do 2 minutes. I want to be fair to everybody. We're going to do 2 minute answers to just like 2 or 3 questions about current issues. And Dan, maybe if you can put like to everybody so that we know that we're all being fair to everybody, just like when there's 30 seconds left. And I will, when we have 30, can everybody see me? I'll just go like this, and that means you have 30 seconds left. And then, I don't know, if you go over, we'll mute you. We won't be mean. I just want to check the chat really quickly.
Is it possible for Eric and I to have additional time in our closing, because both of them had about 2 minutes in their opening, because I timed it, and Eric and I both stick to our time of 1 minute.
Everybody went over 1 minute on their opening.
Okay. I'm happy to be super fair and equitable. And I do appreciate you, Miho. I noticed that you really you strived to keep it under, and in all fairness, I had not said to Erica that it was 1 minute until after she spoke, but let's move forward. And yes, we will, we're gonna roll with this. So the first question is, Los Feliz and Silver Lake schools tend to do better than most schools in the new District 2. Will you encourage their successes or concentrate disproportionately on the schools of poverty? And how will you make sure that the rising tide lifts all boats, as President Kennedy said, rather than putting an anchor on our neighborhood community schools?
Do we just raise our hand or?
Go for it, Miho.
Sorry. I'm sorry. So we're being timed for 2 minutes for this? Or?
Thank you. Yes,
No,
and
I'm
I
asking-
will. I'll give you a 30-second. I'll give you like a 30-second. You got 30 seconds
I'm
left.
just used to making public comments at the school board meetings and we're strictly timed. That's why.
And this is my first time. I so appreciate you.
Okay, sorry. And I'm an attorney, so I'm used to being told, shut up. Okay. All right. So I think that it's very important to encourage all successes. I know that, you know, there is a disproportionality in terms of the educational equities across LAUSD. I'm an attorney. I've been representing kids with special needs all over LAUSD. I sit on the community advisory committee right now. I'm an appointed member and I advise the school board on special education issues. And there's a distinct distinction between certain populations within LAUSD that gets more services as opposed to others. I think though it's very important to embrace everybody. And I think it's very important to push everybody, because I think just because I taught in South LA and my kids were not expected to go anywhere, but I took them to UCLA and I said, this is where you're gonna go. And I understand what Miguel was saying. My students I was on the C-track teacher. So they were the lowest, nobody believed in them. But I think it's so important that you know, when I went to Solano Canyon, it's not in Los Feliz, but that's where I live. And it tends to be a more middle income. I think it's very important that, you know, a lot of the students there are not students from Solano Canyon, but I still think it's very important to push every school to make sure that they are academically succeeding and to ensure that resources are provided at every school. I do agree that certain resources will need more. For example, if you're Title I schools, you're entitled to more. But at the same time, I think it's important because we can learn from the schools that are being successful. And is my 30 seconds warning, or is that? Okay. And so, so I think that answers your question. English isn't my first language, so I wasn't sure with all the anchored part, but I hope I answered it.
Thank you. Yes. And to be fair, also, I did not write these questions. I'm reading questions that have come in. And also, to be fair, I know at King, we're 71% Title I kids. So I don't think the question was geared more as affluence as much as, like, you know, we raise more, we perform better, we have higher test scores and things like that. But when I raise $100,000, school board takes money away from our school because, you know, I'm the president of Friends of King, for those of you who weren't here before. So, and I think that might be more the vein that this is. You know, why do I have to raise money for our school? Shouldn't it be equal to everybody? And so with that, but one of our other, Jenny Chang is here for, hi, we'll let you get settled. Miguel, go for it.
I'll go next. So for example, I think that I would take Marshall and I would take King as example schools. What I'm doing right now is that I'm subbing all over the district. And when I'm at South Central, when I'm in Board District 2, when I'm in Board District 5, I'm everywhere. So I'm taking ideas from what's really good at different schools and letting know principals what's happening in the schools. So I think that when I think that that's a great idea to take what's really good at these schools and be example schools. When I was at Board District 5, Marshall was one of our best schools. We were in charge of it as well when I used to work there. And we used to take example examples of what was happening and what can we tell other principals, how can other principals collaborate and see what's happening at other schools. And it was a great collaboration, being all the way over there in Los Feliz, and when we were in charge of the Southeast. And we got to collaborate, and teachers and principals really love this collaboration that should be happening all across the district, because everybody works different, that these ideas should be going all across. So I wouldn't punish it. I would make it an example school.
And under time, dude, you're amazing. Erica, Maria?
I'll go next. Yeah, so I think, obviously I'm coming from a experience of these schools in this neighborhood. And while Marshall and King are both Title I schools, they are relatively successful in the district. Even Los Feliz STEM over the last couple of years has become much more successful, and they're at an 83% low income rate. So I think that there are reasons, like Miguel, you had mentioned a second ago, that some schools do better than others. And while there are a lot of schools that are in need, I would venture to say most schools in LAUSD are in heavy need. So I would not want to see a school being penalized for doing well by raising money to be better, but rather find more money for all of the schools to do better. I think David Tokofsky, he mentioned earlier, we need more money from the state. We need more money for the schools. And then Dr. Garcia was saying that there used to be more money per pupil. I think this is the main problem, and this needs to be, the school board needs to actually advocate for more money coming to the schools as a whole. Why are we cannibalizing the schools that are doing better on their own by money raising through parents? And everybody's fighting over breadcrumbs. There should actually be enough for every single school. And I think that's the biggest problem within LAUSD. I mean, it's kind of like what we have to do as parents is to raise the extra money to make the schools better. But if you take a school like Franklin, there's nothing left to take away. And if it means giving more money to other schools because they're in more need, there's nothing left. Like, there's literally not a single thing you can take away besides the actual teachers. So,
sorry.
Yeah, so I think that the main concern is spreading the money, helping the schools really do what makes the schools good, the relationship between the principals, the teachers, the parent involvement, and making those schools excel in what makes them good, and finding more money and insisting on the state to give more money for schools.
Thank you. Is that a beautiful little alarm to hear when y'all are over? Okay, perfect. Maria, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So what I would add, I think one funding model to look at and continue to support and uplift, because it's a model that does address equity and does allocate resources where there has been historical and widening opportunity and achievement gaps, and in schools, that were in neighborhoods that were highly impacted by COVID-19. The Student Equity Need Index, which my organization with other partners help formulate with parents and students from communities like the East Side in South LA, that incorporate indicators, both academic and community indicators, to hone in on need and distribute local control funding formula dollars according to that need, without harming other schools that may be moderate or lower need. So to me, I think that is an important and critical resource to look at and to uplift in this time period where we know that so many students, particularly those impacted by COVID, by the digital divide, are facing challenges, whether it's attendance, academic achievement. I think we do have to target resources at scale. And as board member, I would continue to uplift that model and make sure that we continue to invest in accordingly and support amazing school leaders like Dr. Garcia and others that I've worked with on the East Side.
Wonderful, thank you. Wow, under time as well. the threat of the ding ding is really awesome. They should hire me for the next presidential debate, you guys. Just mute them. I got 2 boys. I will mute everybody. Thank you all, everyone. This is really helpful. Ms. Chang, you were, did you want to say something for?
I don't know that this is the right time. I actually was going to speak in support of her. I didn't realize this was going to be panel style. So I can save it for later if that's more appropriate.
You want to just save it for closing statements?
Sure. Well,
actually,
actually, Dr. Rivas is going to be joining us shortly, so I'm really happy she can answer these questions. Best from her.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Then let's move on to one that is near and dear to my heart. Not really. How do you each feel about charter schools and the regulation of them? I know charter schools is a very hot topic. And I would just, if you could just speak a little bit about your position on them in 2 minutes or less. Oh, I can tell you guys are just jumping on that one.
I'll go. Okay, so I believe that charter schools need to have more accountability, and we need to have more transparency of what's happening within our schools. I do know that out there, the charter school movement have done great stuff. There's great organizations like KIPP and other schools that I can name that have done amazing, has sent some of our students to Ivy League schools and done a lot for my neighborhood and other neighborhoods similar to where I come from. So I know that there's good ones, but I know that there's also bad ones. But what we need to do is that there needs to be more accountability, and we need to make sure that they are paying what is in debt to us, to LAUSD. It's public funds that is holding us back at LAUSD, and we could do more about it. But that's my little 2 cents on them.
Right on. Part of being a politician is taking positions.
I'll go. So I've been a teacher since I was a teacher in the late 90s with LAUSD. Back then there were not that many charter schools. It was not a big issue. But there was an issue of public schools not meeting the needs of the students. And so I've always been an advocate for parent engagement, parent, choice. I think it's really important. But I think my concern with charter schools, especially through my experience working with kids with disabilities, is that there is no accountability, there is no transparency, and they can not let in students if they don't want the student. And so that's a huge problem for students with disabilities. Also, kids in foster care. I represent kids in foster care. I represent kids in the delinquency system, which we now say juvenile justice system. I'm a court-appointed attorney, and I do the education rights for them. And, we have a lot of, I sue Green Dot a lot, because they don't comply, and it's a shame that they take in a lot of this money, but then they don't implement the IEPs. And these kids, these parents pull them out of, like, for example, a big school, because the high school, there's so many kids, and they pull them out so that they can find a smaller class size. But then they go into these schools and these kids are not implementing the IEP. And they, some are lack of training and stuff, but I think there's not consistency amongst the charter school. I am for, we need to invest in the schools that we have. A lot of parents don't have the time to look at all these schools and pick the school that's best for their child. They have to go to their home school. And so we need to ensure those home schools are good. I personally don't want my kid to go to Florence, which is my home school. I'm going to homeschool my child. But and that shouldn't be the case, but it's just, I have to think about what is best for my child. And not that I have a child right now, I'm actually a foster adoptive parent. So hopefully by the end of this year I will be. But I think that we just have to really think about, when we take away money from, when we create more charter schools, we're taking money away from the public schools, because this money right now goes to the student. And so that we need to think about, you know, how can we increase how can we address the declining enrollment? And I don't think creating more charter schools is the way right now. We need to focus on the schools that exist and help the students that are there.
Thank you.
I think I went over.
You did go over, but I forgot to set my timer, and then I was like, I'm not cutting her off. So this is, see, it all karma, baby. It all around. Boom. There was a quick question I think I got answered about IEPs. So who would like to wade into the charter school?
I'll go next. So yeah, the charter versus public school. I think for a long time, you know, LAUSD has not invested enough into their students, and charter schools became the de facto solve for the problems. And then that kind of exploded. So now we have charter schools coming out of every direction. I have a feeling that might sort of taper off, because while there's a lot of you know, enrollment decline across LAUSD, that's going to happen at the charter schools as well. But what I would prefer, I mean, obviously what everybody says about more, you know, transparency and being more clear with the money and the admissions and taking care of all of the IEPs and all of those students that they are maybe or maybe not accepting, there definitely needs to be more transparency. What I would rather concentrate, because there are so many charter schools that are legal and they are entitled to be there because the voters have chosen that to be true. I think that LAUSD really needs to take an example of why people are choosing charter schools. What is attracting them to go there? Parents are choosing to put their students in a charter school. So why do they go there? If you look around a lot of LAUSD, I think one of the success stories of what the actual public schools are doing is magnet schools. And you can see it in King, and you can see it in Marshall, and you can see it at LaUSD STEM. The magnets are a very good success story, and they're kind of the LAUSD version of charters. Not the same undisclosed transparency, but they should be doing more magnet schools that cater to the parents that want a more specialized experience. And I think that appeals more to more students and to more parents. And the people who go to magnet schools tend to do better because the parents are then also more involved. LAUSD needs to harness that idea and turn our public schools into that success story.
Thank you. Two left. Actually, Maria, I'm going to ask you to go. And then Rocio, we're talking about charter schools, your position on them, and sort of where you fall on the charter school. Everyone, we're going to finish this. We'll do 2 minutes of this. And then after this, we'll have Maria and then Rocio, and then we'll move into just quick 1 minute closing statements, because I know we're already a little over time. Sound good, everybody? Yes. Maria, can I pop you on there?
Yes, thank you. There's much that I agree with in terms of what the other candidates have stated. I think for communities that for decades struggled with underinvestment and overcrowding, I think it's important to value their empowerment to choose, as well as all parents across the district. I mean, I think we can all agree we want what's best for our children, and making sure they have access to the best schools and the best education. And, you know, for many decades, we had very hard choices in communities like South LA and the East Side. And in the work I did with Inner City Struggle, our focus has always been to uplift our traditional public school system, to make sure more schools were built, to make sure there was curriculum that was engaging and focused on career and college preparation, to make sure that students didn't feel criminalized, that instead of being pushed out, they were engaged in restorative justice practices, that there was more teachers and more guidance counselors and mental health resources. So I think when there's those kinds of investments and that transformation, parents, families will choose LAUSD. We've seen it at Roosevelt and Mendes High School, where there is a waiting list because those schools have engaged faculty and staff, more resources, and amazing school leaders. So I think for me, that would be the strategy. And of course, making sure there's accountability across the board. And with this drop in enrollment that we're facing, how do we make sure that spaces in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools are being used creatively to provide wellness services, arts and music program, special education centers? So I think that's a part of the component that we have to make sure is addressed as well in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess I'll go. I'm the last one. So hello, everyone. I apologize for being late. I'm actually here and just finished an endorsement interview. But, since I have been, when I went to Teachers College, Columbia University, I took a class in the privatization for public education. And I took a course with Professor Hank Levin, and the course was an introduction to charter schools and how, the benevolence of what we're supposed to bring, innovative labs. But in the past, I would say 20 years or so, when I started really delving into observing charter schools, conducting charter school evaluations, I've come to realize that some are doing good work. Some have really compassion and they really are dedicated to their students. And some are really just there to open a school and to profit, to make, to open a school and not really, and have emergency credentialed teachers, having administrators that don't have the certification or credentials to be administrators. I have also seen how parents have been how they've been told to counsel out their students because they don't have the services for them, particularly special needs students. I've also seen how charter schools will close within a matter of a week and without really notifying parents, particularly working parents who don't have the time, really, who are not really as present and are really hoping that their kids are receiving or at least feel that their students are receiving a good education. And then when they come to school, the school is closed, right? So I've seen this firsthand. So yes, there has to be very strong oversight. We have to have strong accountability and transparency. To this day, as I'm working with Jackie Goldberg as her research and policy deputy, this is an area that I have been really focusing on. And I know for sure that the district the charter schools do get away with a lot through loopholes and also through co-locations. They're not paying their over allocation fees. They owe millions of dollars to our schools. So we do need to have strong policies and regulations at the district that are really looking at all of the activities of charter schools, the ones that are opening and the ones that are actually low performing. They really need to be looked at and closed, if anything, particularly if they're not meeting or if they're not providing the same educational services as our local neighborhood public schools. So that's something I'm working on and I will continue working on as a board member, having strong oversight and evaluation of the charter school division.
Thank you. And thank you for just jumping in there. I think that's all we have time for the questions. Can we all agree to a 1-minute closing statement? Does that work? Rocio, would you like to go first since you didn't, would you like an extra 30 seconds since you didn't get to give your opening statement?
Sure, I appreciate that. That was very kind of you. Thank you so much. So yes, I'm Rocio Rivas. I'm a parent. I'm a graduate of LAUSD. I have academic experience into education. Public education has been a passion of mine since I can remember. I went through LAUSD and I thrived in our schools, but I also know as a student that there were a lot of inequities. There are a lot of my own peers who did not make it through. Either they were involved in gangs and passed away, or were actually entered into the school to prison pipeline. So I have lived that through my peers. I have lived that through my own family. I understand as a parent wanting the best education for your child. And yes, I know that the district has issues and problems and challenges, but it's an institution that is for the public. It is for the people. And this is something that we really have to work hard, and we have to make sure that our schools are fully funded, that they're fully staffed, and that they have the enrichment programs, the after-school programs, everything, the holistic services that our students need. And this is something that I've been working on for 3 years now, actively as a board. But however, prior to that, I was a advocate, public education advocate. I fought hard for honest and equitable representation on the board. And I will continue doing that. I will continue fighting for community schools, for greening our schools, and to making sure that there's equity for every single one of our students and our students. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And as I said, I apologize for being here late, but I thank you for this forum. Thank you so much.
We're happy that you could be able to join us. Thank you for being here. In your car, no less. 1 minute closing statement. Who's next? I feel like I'm at the dinner table. I'll just sit here all night.
Fine, I'll go. I'll go.
Miguel, do it.
My name is Miguel Angel Segura. Like I said, I'm born and raised here in Board District 2. I have a master's in education. I've been a full-time teacher, and I'm back in the classroom right now. I know that LAUSD has amazing stuff going on. I see it every single day while I sub. We need to market this more. We need to make sure that our community schools are examples all over. It doesn't matter if you're in downtown LA, South LA, the Bay Area, like the Harbor area, or anywhere. It shouldn't matter where you are. Everybody should have an opportunity at education. And I believe in public education. As your next board member, I won't be going in as a fresh person. I have the experience and collaboration and friendships at the district at Beaudry already. And that's a little bit about me. Thank you. And hopefully I get to be your next board member.
That was only 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds left. You're done. He's like, mic drop. Out. We have Maria, Mijo, and Erica. Who would like to go next? All right, I'm picking Maria.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you again for this opportunity. And, although, Los Feliz may be facing different conditions and challenges than communities in like the east side of Los Angeles, I think there's a lot that we can do by working together and finding common ground. I think we all can agree that we need to lower class size in LAUSD to create more personalized learning environments for all of our children. I think we all can agree that LAUSD needs a whole child approach. We need to infuse our schools with mental health supports, with restorative justice counselors and school climate advocates, and that we all want a safe and welcoming environment for our students. And when it comes to LAUSD and being a public resource, how can we work together to leverage the space, to leverage our schools to be hubs of community resources to serve all of our children and all of our families? So if elected to the school board, I look forward to building bridges and advancing an educational equity agenda for all.
Thank you. Mijo, you're front and center in mine.
Okay. All right. Thank you again for providing me with a space to share my ideas. I am a writing candidate, and so you actually have to write my name in here on the ballot, but it is certified. If elected, I will put children first. I will focus on equity, justice, inclusion, and transparency in our public education system. These are my 5 top priorities. 1, reduce class size to 20-to-1 from K to 5th grade. 2, ensure that 100% of students graduate with the tools to succeed in the workplace and in higher education. 3, decrease the number of high school and middle school dropouts and ensure that effective interventions are in place before these children become disengaged from school. 4, proactively address the school to prison pipeline by increasing the number of school psychologists and college counselors at every high school and ensuring that every school is implementing the School Climate Bill of Rights. And most importantly, 5, listen to our students and ensure that the curriculum is student-centered and culturally relevant. I promise to be accessible, create opportunities for our stakeholders to be heard, and passionately advocate for these issues, and will stay true to what I promise. Please write in my name, Mia Rai, for LAUSD School Board. Thank you for your time and consideration. Together, let's put children first. Trabajemos juntos para poner los niños primero. Gracias.
Thank you. And while my dog barks, Erica, since you were brave enough to jump in first, you get to go last.
Well, my name is Erica Velarde Espinosa, and we have a golden opportunity right in front of us right now. We learned so much through the pandemic, and there's a giant surplus. At the same time, there is a huge enrollment decline and a lot of repairs that need to be made after kids being behind a computer for the last 2 years. Right now, I think some of the most important things that need to be implemented immediately are mental health care. We need to find a way for our teachers to feel appreciated, to retain them, and to recruit more of them, because we are in a major shortage. And I think that's LAUSD working with UTLA, making the teachers have a good agreement. We need to make our schools safer, and the police union needs to exist. We need to keep our campuses safe across the board. The charters we talked about, there is the way of making charters good by having more affiliated charters. Some of the affiliated charters around do actually help and are really functioning well. So if we're going to have charters, why not shift them to affiliated charters? I think that's the best way to do it. And finally, I think the most important thing to do is to have more parent engagement. Some of the success stories you can see are coming from the engaged parent population. And if we can get the parents involved in their students, they don't fall off the cliff as easily. Public education is absolutely essential to our democracy. Oh, I ran out of time. Okay.
I know. Thank you so much. And we are over, and I want to thank all of the candidates for joining today. I can't vote for any of you because I'm in a different district, because that's LAUSD, but I was so grateful for this learning experience. The ballots, I received mine. So the ballots are in your mailboxes. To the participants who came, please vote, please vote, please get educated and vote. This is very important. And thank you all for coming. I wish you all the best of luck in all of this, because at the end of the day, you are all here for my children. So thank you all for coming. And I hope we can do this again with this. This would be good. All right. Bye. Take care.